The blood beneath Waylon York's boots had not yet dried when he heard the growl that made his chest tighten with primal fear. He had been tracking the deer for hours through the dense forest that bordered his small homestead, hoping to bring home meat that would last him through the coming weeks. Winter was approaching in this frontier territory, and every hunter knew that survival depended on preparation. The arrow he had loosed had struck true, piercing the buck's heart, and the animal had stumbled forward perhaps 20 paces before collapsing in a clearing surrounded by ancient oaks. Waylon had approached carefully, his bow still in hand, murmuring thanks to the creature whose life would sustain his own. But now, as he knelt beside the fallen deer with his hunting knife drawn to begin field dressing, that sound reached his ears. Low and rumbling, coming from somewhere in the shadowed tree line to his left. He froze, every muscle tensing as his eyes swept the forest. The afternoon sun filtered through the canopy in golden shafts, creating pockets of light and darkness that could hide anything. The growl came again, closer this time, and then Waylon saw it. A bear, massive and dark-furred, emerging from behind a massive oak trunk. Not just any bear, but a territorial male easily weighing 600 pounds, its small eyes fixed on both Waylon and the dead deer with unmistakable intent. The creature's lips pulled back, revealing teeth designed to tear flesh from bone. Waylon's mind raced through his options with the clarity that came from 5 years of living on the frontier. Running would trigger the bear's chase instinct. Climbing was impossible. Bears climbed better than most men. His bow lay on the ground near the deer, 3 paces away. The knife in his hand would be useless against such a creature. He began to rise slowly, making himself as large as possible, preparing to shout and hope the bear decided the confrontation was not worth the effort. The bear had other ideas. It charged. 600 pounds of muscle and fury came straight at him, covering the distance with terrifying speed. Waylon had perhaps 3 heartbeats to live, time enough only to think of his mother back in the settled lands, to regret that he had come to this wild place seeking independence and freedom from the constraints of civilized society. He threw up his arms in a futile gesture of protection, knowing it would not matter. Then she was there. An orc woman, taller than Waylon by half a head, stepped between them without hesitation. She appeared so suddenly he wondered if she had materialized from the forest itself. Her skin was the deep green of forest moss, her black hair pulled back in a thick braid that hung past her shoulders. She wore practical leather armor over a tunic and trousers, all in earth tones that would blend with the woodland. Small tusks curved up from her lower jaw, and her pointed ears were pressed back against her skull in a posture of aggression directed at the charging bear. The orc woman raised her arms and released a roar that shook the air itself. It was not a human sound, but something primal and challenging, the call of a predator asserting dominance. The sound resonated in Waylon's chest, made his bones vibrate. The charging bear actually stumbled, its momentum carrying it forward even as confusion crossed its features. It slid to a halt perhaps 10 feet from where they stood, dirt and leaves spraying from beneath its massive paws. The orc woman roared again, this time stepping forward toward the bear rather than away. She made herself enormous, spreading her arms wide, and the sound she produced went on and on until Waylon's ears rang with it. The bear swayed its head from side to side, clearly reconsidering its attack. She advanced another step, her roar finally cutting off only to be replaced by a series of sharp barking sounds that drove the bear backward. The creature huffed and grumbled, but when she took another aggressive step forward, it turned and lumbered back into the forest, crashing through underbrush with surprising speed for something so large, Silence descended on the clearing like a blanket. Waylon stood frozen, his heart hammering against his ribs so hard he thought it might break free. The orc woman remained facing the direction the bear had gone, her shoulders tense, clearly listening for any sign of its return. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 30 seconds, she finally turned to face him. Her eyes were a warm amber color, and they swept over him quickly, assessing him for injury. When she seemed satisfied he was intact, her expression shifted to something harder to read. Not quite hostile, but wary, guarded. "You are unharmed," she said. It was not a question but a statement, her voice deeper than a human woman's would be, with a slight roughness to it. Waylon realized he was still holding his knife in a death grip. He lowered it slowly, nodding. "Thanks to you." His voice came out rougher than he intended, still thick with adrenaline. "That bear would have killed me." "Yes." She did not bother with false modesty or reassurance. "You should not hunt alone in these woods. The bears are preparing for winter. They are aggressive." He almost laughed at that, though there was no humor in it. "I have been hunting these woods for 3 years. That is the first bear I have encountered. Then you have been fortunate." She glanced at the dead deer, then back at him. "You should finish your work quickly and leave. The blood will draw other predators." "What about you?" The question came out before he could stop it. "Were you hunting as well?" Something shifted in her expression, a flicker of uncertainty quickly suppressed. "I was passing through." It was obviously not the full truth, but Waylon was hardly in a position to interrogate her. An orc had just saved his life, stepping between him and certain death without knowing him, without any reason to risk herself. Everything he had been taught about orcs, all the stories from the settled territories about their savage nature and their hatred of humans, suddenly seemed like lies. "I owe you my life," he said formally, meeting her eyes. "My name is Waylon York. I live on a homestead about 2 miles east of here." She studied him for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether sharing her name would be wise. Finally, she spoke. "Grishna." "Grishna," he repeated, committing it to memory. "Thank you, truly. I would be dead if not for you." She nodded once, a sharp gesture, then turned as if to leave. Waylon surprised himself by speaking again. "Wait." Grishna paused but did not turn back to face him. The tension in her shoulders suggested she was ready to bolt at the first sign of trouble. "I know you have no reason to trust me," Waylon said quickly. "And I understand if you want nothing more to do with me. But I have food at my home, a warm fire, and it will be dark soon. If you are truly just passing through, you would be welcome to rest there for the night. It is the least I can offer after what you did." Now she did turn, and her expression was one of such surprise that Waylon realized she had expected him to react with fear or hostility, not gratitude. "You would invite an orc into your home. You saved my life. I would be a poor excuse for a man if I could not offer you basic hospitality in return." Grishna's amber eyes searched his face, clearly looking for deception or hidden motives. Waylon kept his expression open and honest, which was easy because he meant every word. After what felt like an age, she spoke again. "I will help you carry the deer. The night is coming fast, as you said." Relief and something else, something he could not quite name, flooded through Waylon's chest. He nodded and turned back to the deer, pulling out his knife to begin the necessary work. Grishna moved to help without being asked, her movements efficient and practiced. She produced her own blade, larger than his, and together they field-dressed the animal in perhaps a quarter of the time it would have taken Waylon alone. They worked in silence, but it was not an uncomfortable quiet. Waylon found himself acutely aware of her presence, of the economical grace with which she moved, the strength in her arms as she helped position the carcass. She knew exactly what she was doing, which spoke to experience hunting and living off the land. When they finished, Grishna fashioned a carrying pole from a sturdy branch with quick, practiced movements. They lashed the deer to it and each took an end. The weight was substantial, but distributed between them it was manageable. Waylon led the way back toward his homestead, following the trail markers he had left that morning. The sun was sinking toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The forest around them came alive with the sounds of evening, birds calling their last songs of the day, small creatures rustling in the underbrush. Waylon's mind churned with questions he wanted to ask but did not dare. Why had Grishna been in those woods? Where was she headed? Was she truly alone? It took them nearly an hour to reach his homestead, the weight of the deer and the rough terrain slowing their progress. When they finally emerged from the tree line into the cleared land surrounding his small cabin, full darkness was perhaps 30 minutes away. Waylon's homestead was modest but well-maintained. The cabin itself was constructed of logs he had cut and fitted himself, with a stone chimney rising from one end. A small barn stood nearby, currently housing only his milk cow and a few chickens. A vegetable garden, mostly harvested now with winter approaching, occupied a plot on the southern side where it received the most sun. Split rail fencing marked the boundaries of his property, and beyond that the forest pressed in on all sides. They carried the deer to the barn, hanging it from a beam to finish cooling. Waylon would butcher it properly tomorrow in the daylight. For now, exhaustion and the aftermath of fear pulled at his limbs, making him feel every one of his 26 years. "Come," he said to Grishna, who had remained silent during their journey. "Let me get a fire started and find something for us to eat." She followed him to the cabin, but he noticed she paused at the threshold, her eyes sweeping the interior as if assessing potential threats. The inside was a single large room with a sleeping loft accessible by ladder. A fieldstone fireplace dominated one wall, with Waylon's sleeping pallet and blankets visible in the loft above. A rough-hewn table with 2 chairs occupied the center of the space, and shelves lined the walls holding his meager possessions and supplies. It was the home of a man living alone, functional but sparse. Grishna finally stepped inside, moving with the cautious grace of a wild animal entering unfamiliar territory. Waylon busied himself with building up the fire, coaxing flames from the embers he had banked that morning. Once it was crackling cheerfully, he pulled out a pot and began assembling a simple stew from dried meat, root vegetables, and herbs. It would not be fancy, but it would be hot and filling. "Please sit," he said, gesturing to one of the chairs. "It will take a little time to cook, but there is water in the pitcher if you are thirsty." Grishna sat, though she chose the chair that gave her a clear view of the door. Waylon noticed but said nothing. He would probably do the same in her position. As the stew began to simmer, filling the cabin with savory smells, he allowed himself to truly look at his unexpected guest. She was strikingly beautiful, he realized, though not in any way human standards would recognize. Her features were stronger, more angular, her jaw more pronounced. But there was a harmony to her face, a balance that was undeniably appealing. The tusks that curved up from her lower lip, small enough not to impede speech, somehow added to rather than detracted from her appearance. Her arms, visible beneath the leather armor, showed defined muscle that spoke of a life of physical labor and combat training. "How long have you lived here alone?" Grishna asked suddenly, her amber eyes meeting his across the small cabin. 3 years, Waylon replied, stirring the stew. "I came out here from the settled territories, wanted land of my own, space to breathe. My father was a carpenter in a town that was too crowded and too full of rules. I wanted something different, You are far from your people. By choice. He paused, considering his next words. I suppose you could say I never quite fit in there. Always felt like I was wearing clothes that did not quite match my shape, if that makes sense. Something shifted in Grishna's expression, a flash of understanding. It makes sense. What about you? Waylon asked, emboldened by her response. You said you were passing through. Where are you headed? The shuttered look returned to her face, walls going up. Away. Just that single word, heavy with meaning. Waylon recognized the tone of someone running from something, or perhaps towards something, but not willing to share the details. He nodded and let the subject drop, focusing instead on the stew. They ate in relative silence, though it was more comfortable than the quiet in the forest had been. The stew was simple but good, and Waylon noticed that Grishna ate with an efficiency that suggested she had not had a proper meal in some time. He made sure to give her the larger portion, claiming he had eaten a substantial breakfast, which was only partially true. After the meal, Waylon cleared the dishes and then pulled out his bedroll from the loft. You should take the sleeping loft, he said. I can bed down here by the fire. It will be warm enough. Grishna looked at him as if he had spoken in a foreign language. You would give an orc your bed. You saved my life. The least you deserve is a comfortable place to sleep. He kept his tone matter of fact, not making it into something bigger than simple hospitality. Your neighbors would call you a fool for allowing me under your roof, or worse than a fool. I do not have neighbors close enough to see my home, Waylon replied. And even if I did, what I do on my own land is my business. You have shown me nothing but kindness and help. I will not repay that by treating you with suspicion or cruelty. Grishna stared at him for a long moment, and Waylon saw a war of emotions play across her face. Finally, she spoke, her voice softer than before. You are not what I expected. What did you expect? Fear, hatred, a knife in the back once I turned away. The words were matter of fact, but they carried a weight of experience that made Waylon's chest ache. I am sorry that has been your experience with humans. It is simply the way of things. She stood, moving toward the ladder. But I thank you, for the food and for the kindness. She climbed to the loft with easy grace, and Waylon spread his bedroll near the fire. He lay down, staring at the play of flames and shadows on the ceiling, his mind too full for sleep, despite his exhaustion. Above him, he could hear the soft sounds of Grishna settling in, and he found himself wondering about her story, about what had brought her to these woods alone. Sleep came eventually, pulling him under into dreams of amber eyes and forest shadows. He woke to the smell of cooking food. Sunlight streamed through the cabin's small windows, and for a moment Waylon was disoriented. Then memory returned in a rush, the bear, Grishna, the night before. He sat up quickly, looking toward the fireplace. Grishna was crouched before the fire, stirring something in the pot. She had clearly been awake for some time, her hair rebraided and her armor back in place. When she heard him moving, she glanced over. I hope you do not mind. I found oats and made porridge. Mind, that is the first time in 3 years I have woken to someone else cooking breakfast. Waylon stood, stretching muscles stiff from sleeping on the floor. Thank you. They ate the porridge with honey drizzled over it, and Waylon found himself studying Grishna's face in the morning light. She looked tired, he realized, as if she had not slept well. Or perhaps as if she had not slept well for many nights. I should go, Grishna said as they finished eating. I have imposed on your hospitality long enough. You have not imposed. Waylon set down his bowl, choosing his next words carefully. Grishna, I do not know your situation and you do not owe me any explanations, but if you need a place to rest for more than one night, you would be welcome to stay. She went very still, her amber eyes searching his face. Why would you offer that? Because you clearly need help and because you saved my life. Because you are alone out here and winter is coming. Because it is the right thing to do. I am an orc. I noticed. He kept his voice gentle but firm. That does not change what I said. Grishna stood abruptly, pacing to the window to stare out at the clearing beyond. Waylon remained seated, giving her space to think. He could see the tension in her shoulders, the internal debate she was having with herself. My clan cast me out, she said finally, not turning to face him. 3 weeks ago. I have been wandering since, avoiding human settlements, trying to decide where to go. Why did they cast you out? Because I refused to participate in a raid. The words came out flat, emotionless, but Waylon heard the pain beneath them. My clan, the Blood Fang, they survive by raiding human farms and small settlements, taking livestock, supplies, sometimes weapons. I was raised to believe this was necessary, that humans were enemies who would destroy us if given the chance. She turned to face him now, her expression challenging. But I began to question. I saw children crying over slaughtered animals. I saw families left with nothing to survive the winter. I asked why we could not trade instead of take, why we could not find another way. My questions were seen as weakness, betrayal. So they exiled you. My chieftain gave me a choice. Participate in the next raid and prove my loyalty, or leave and never return. I chose to leave. She lifted her chin, defiant. I do not regret it. You should not regret it. What you did took courage. It made me a pariah. No human settlement will accept an orc. My own people have disowned me. I have nowhere to go, Waylon. Your offer of hospitality is kind, but it cannot last. Eventually, you will need me to leave. Waylon stood, walking slowly toward her. He stopped a respectful distance away, not wanting to crowd her. What if I do not need you to leave? What if I said you could stay as long as you wanted? Help around the homestead if you like, earn your keep, but have a safe place to live. That is madness. Your people, my people, are miles away. I told you, I came out here to get away from them, from their expectations and their narrow thinking. I have no intention of letting them dictate who I can or cannot offer shelter to. They would call you an orc lover. They would turn against you. Let them. He met her eyes steadily. I live by my own code, Grishna. One that says when someone saves your life, you do not turn them away when they need help. One that says people should be judged by their actions, not by the color of their skin or what their people have done. Tears welled in Grishna's amber eyes, shocking them both. She turned away quickly, dashing at her face with the back of her hand. I have not cried since I was a child. You have been through something traumatic. Tears are nothing to be ashamed of. Orcs do not cry. You are crying now and you are still an orc. Perhaps orcs do cry when they are alone or with someone they trust not to use it against them. She laughed, a wet sound halfway between amusement and a sob. You are a strange human, Waylon York. I will take that as a compliment. He smiled gently. So will you stay, at least for the winter. By spring, if you want to move on, I will help you however I can, but you need a safe place now and I can offer that. Grishna turned back to face him, and the vulnerability in her expression made his breath catch. If I stay, there will be difficulties. If anyone from your kind comes here and sees me, there will be questions, possibly violence. Then we will deal with that if it happens. I have a hunting cabin about 2 miles north. It is small but weatherproof. If we see anyone approaching the homestead, you could go there. But honestly, I see other humans maybe once every 2 months when I go to the trading post for supplies I cannot make or grow myself. You have thought this through. I thought it through while watching you cook breakfast and realizing I did not want you to leave. The honesty of that statement hung between them. Grishna studied him for a long moment, and Waylon wondered what she saw. A foolish human, a potential threat. Or perhaps, like him, she saw the possibility of something unexpected, understanding, companionship, maybe even friendship. "I will stay," she said finally, "through the winter, and I will work. I will not be a burden." "I never thought you would be." Relief washed through him, stronger than he expected. "Thank you." They spent the morning working together, Waylon showing Grishna around the homestead and discussing what needed to be done before winter truly set in. The list was substantial. Wood needed to be chopped and stacked. The barn needed repairs to keep out the cold winds. The chimney needed cleaning. The root cellar needed to be properly organized with the preserved foods that would see them through until spring. Grishna proved to be an incredibly hard worker, with strength that far exceeded Waylon's. She could split logs with half the effort it took him, and she worked with a focus and efficiency that spoke of years of training. By midday, they had accomplished more than Waylon usually managed in 3 days alone. They broke for lunch, eating bread and cheese sitting on the split rail fence overlooking the cleared land. The autumn sun was warm on their faces, though the breeze carried the promise of colder days to come. "Tell me about your family," Grishna said, surprising him with the personal question. "You said your father was a carpenter." "He is, I suppose, unless something has changed in the last 3 years. Good man, my father, worked hard, provided well, but he wanted me to follow in his trade to take over his business. I tried for years. I learned the skills, did the work. But I hated it. Why? Too confined. Too much time indoors, too much time building things for other people according to their specifications. I wanted to build my own life according to my own vision." He paused, choosing his words. "My father took it as a rejection. We had a terrible argument when I told him I was leaving for the frontier. We have not spoken since. That is a hard thing. Family connections are important. They are. But so is being true to yourself. I could not live the life he wanted for me, not without losing myself in the process." Grishna nodded slowly. "I understand that better than you know. My mother was a warrior, respected in our clan. She expected me to follow that path without question. When I began to show more interest in healing herbs and diplomacy than in raiding, she was disappointed. Then when I refused to participate in the raids, she was the first to call for my exile. I am sorry, that must have hurt terribly." "It did, it does." She stared out at the forest. "But you are right. Being true to yourself matters, even when it costs you everything you thought you knew." They returned to work after lunch, falling into a comfortable rhythm. Waylon found himself hyper-aware of Grishna's presence, of the way she moved, the sound of her voice when she asked questions or made observations. There was something compelling about her, beyond the obvious fact that she had saved his life. She was intelligent, thoughtful, and despite everything she had been through, there was a core of kindness in her that showed through in small ways. The way she gently shooed a spider outside rather than killing it. The way she spoke softly to his milk cow when entering the barn. The way she made sure to clean and return his tools exactly where she had found them. As the afternoon stretched toward evening, Waylon realized he was already dreading the idea of spring, when Grishna might choose to leave. The homestead, which had seemed perfectly adequate for 3 years, suddenly felt like it would be unbearably lonely once he was alone again. But spring was months away. For now she was here. They worked side by side as the days passed into weeks. The routine they developed felt natural, almost as if they had been working together for years rather than days. Waylon would wake first, start the fire and begin breakfast. Grishna would come down from the loft, and they would eat together while discussing the day's tasks. Then they would work until midday, break for lunch, work through the afternoon, and spend the evenings by the fire. It was during those evenings that Waylon truly came to know Grishna. They would talk for hours, sharing stories of their pasts, their hopes for the future. Grishna told him about Orcish culture, the complex honor codes and clan structures. She taught him words in her language, laughing at his clumsy pronunciation. He told her about human customs, about books he had read and places he had seen on his journey to the frontier. 3 weeks after Grishna's arrival, the first snow fell. They woke to find the world transformed, everything covered in a pristine white blanket. Waylon came down from the loft, where he had insisted on sleeping since Grishna had told him she preferred being able to see the door at night, to find her standing at the window, her expression one of quiet wonder. "We do not get much snow in the southern territories where my clan lives," she said softly. "I have only seen it a handful of times. It is beautiful, but it also means we need to be more careful. The cold can be deadly if you are caught unprepared." They spent that day reinforcing the barn and ensuring all the animals had adequate shelter and food. The chickens, offended by the cold, huddled together in their coop, requiring Waylon to break ice in their water container. The cow, more stoic, simply chewed her cud and watched them work with placid eyes. That night, as they sat by the fire, Grishna moved her chair slightly closer to Waylon's than usual. It was a small thing, probably unconscious, but it made something warm bloom in his chest. Over the weeks, the careful distance she had maintained had been slowly shrinking as trust built between them. "I have been thinking," she said, staring into the flames, "about what happens in spring." Waylon's chest tightened. "You do not have to decide anything now. I know. But I find myself wondering if there might be others like me. Orcs who question the way things have always been. Humans who see past the fear and hatred. Perhaps there could be a place where both could live together, trade together, build something new. That is a beautiful vision." "It is a foolish dream." But she said it without conviction. Maybe, but all great things start as dreams. He turned to look at her, finding her amber eyes already on him. "If anyone could make such a dream real, I think it would be someone like you. Not alone. It would take people from both sides willing to try, people willing to risk everything for the possibility of something better. You already risked everything by leaving your clan, and you are risking your standing with your people by sheltering me. I do not care about my standing with people who would judge me for showing basic kindness and decency." Grishna smiled, a real smile that showed her small tusks and made her whole face light up. Waylon found himself smiling back, feeling something shift between them. Something that went beyond friendship or simple companionship. He recognized it for what it was, though part of him wanted to deny it. He was falling in love with her. With an orc woman who had stumbled into his life by chance, who had saved him from a bear, who cooked his meals and worked beside him and made him laugh with her dry observations about his clumsy carpentry skills. It was impossible. It was forbidden. It would bring nothing but trouble if anyone ever found out. He did not care. The realization was both terrifying and liberating. He was falling in love with Grishna, and he was not going to fight it. Whatever consequences that brought, he would face them. Because for the first time in his life, he felt truly alive, truly himself. He did not tell her. Not yet. The feelings were too new, too uncertain. He did not know if she felt anything similar, and the last thing he wanted was to make her uncomfortable in what had become her home too. But he thought she might. He saw it in the way her eyes lingered on him when she thought he was not looking, the way she found excuses to stand close to him when they worked, the way her voice softened when she spoke his name, or perhaps he was fooling himself, seeing what he wanted to see. Winter deepened. The snow piled higher and temperatures dropped. They burned through wood faster than Waylon had anticipated, necessitating trips into the forest to cut more. Grishna insisted on coming along, and he was grateful for both her company and her strength. She could carry twice what he could, and her keen eyes often spotted dead standing timber that would burn well. It was on one such trip, about 6 weeks after Grishna's arrival, that they encountered other humans. They were deep in the forest, working on felling a large dead oak when Waylon heard voices. Male voices, multiple speakers, coming from the direction of the trail. He and Grishna exchanged a quick look, and she immediately moved to gather her tools, clearly intending to disappear into the trees. But it was too late. 3 men emerged into the small clearing where they were working, and all 3 stopped dead at the sight of Grishna. Waylon recognized them immediately. Hank Preston and his 2 sons, Tobias and Marcus. They lived on a homestead about 8 miles east and made occasional trips to the same trading post Waylon used. They were rough men, suspicious of outsiders, the type who saw threats everywhere and responded with violence first and questions later. Hank's hand went immediately to the axe at his belt. "Waylon York, is that you?" "It is." Waylon moved subtly, positioning himself between the Preston men and Grishna. "We are just cutting firewood, heading back soon." "You have an orc with you." Hank's voice was flat, dangerous. "Are you prisoner? Blink twice if you need help." "I am not a prisoner. Grishna is a friend helping me prepare for winter." All 3 men stared at him as if he had grown a second head. Tobias, the elder son, actually laughed, though there was no humor in it. "A friend? An orc friend? Have you lost your mind?" "My mind is fine, thank you. Now if you will excuse us, that thing is a danger." Marcus, the younger son, spat on the ground, "Probably planning to murder you in your sleep and take everything you have." Grishna spoke for the first time, her voice calm but firm. "I have no intention of harming Waylon or taking anything. I have been helping with work around his homestead in exchange for shelter during the winter. That is all. It speaks." Hank's lip curled. "Probably lies with every breath. Orcs are savages, everyone knows it." "Boy, you are coming with us right now, and we are dealing with this creature before it causes trouble." "No." Waylon's voice came out harder than he intended. "Grishna has done nothing wrong. She saved my life, and she has been nothing but helpful and honorable. I will not stand by while you threaten her. She saved your life." Tobias sneered. "More likely she is the reason you were in danger in the first place. Orcs are tricksters as well as savages. A bear charged me. Grishna stepped between us and drove it off. I would be dead without her." Waylon stood his ground, though his heart hammered against his ribs. 3 against 1 were bad odds, and if it came to violence, he was not confident he could protect Grishna. Hank studied him for a long moment, then looked at Grishna, who stood with her head high and her expression carefully neutral. "Even if that is true, you are making a mistake. When others hear about this, they will come. They will not be as understanding as we are. Then they will find me standing beside her, and they can deal with both of us." "You are willing to become an outcast for an orc?" Marcus asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "I am willing to stand by someone who has shown me nothing but kindness and loyalty. If that makes me an outcast, so be it." The Preston men exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. Finally, Hank shook his head. "You are a fool, Waylon York, but it is your funeral. Just remember, when that thing turns on you, do not come crying to us for help." "I will not need to, but your concern is noted." The 3 men left, casting dark looks back over their shoulders. Waylon and Grishna stood frozen until the sound of their footsteps faded entirely into the forest. Then Grishna let out a shaky breath. "You should not have done that. You should have told them I forced you, that I was holding you prisoner. They would have believed it. I am not going to lie about you or throw you to them like meat to wolves." Waylon turned to face her, seeing the fear and gratitude warring in her expression. "I meant what I said. I stand with you, even though it will bring you trouble, even though they will tell others and more will come, even though." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and rested his hand on her shoulder. "You are not alone anymore, Grishna. We face whatever comes together." She looked at his hand on her shoulder, then up at his face, and something in her expression cracked. The careful wall she had maintained, the distance she had kept, suddenly crumbled. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him in a fierce embrace. Waylon froze for just a moment, surprised, then returned the embrace, holding her tightly. She was warm and solid against him, and he could feel her heart beating rapidly against his chest. They stood like that for a long moment, neither speaking, just taking comfort in the contact. When they finally pulled apart, Grishna's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Thank you for defending me, for believing in me, for seeing me as more than a monster. You were never a monster, not to me." They finished gathering the wood in silence, but it was a comfortable quiet, charged with something new and fragile between them. The ride home on the sledge Waylon used to transport wood was companionable, and he found himself acutely aware of Grishna sitting beside him, their shoulders occasionally bumping as the sledge navigated the uneven forest path. That night, neither of them brought up what had happened with the Preston men, though it hung unspoken between them. Waylon knew Hank had been right about one thing: word would spread. It was only a matter of time before others came, and they would not all be content with stern warnings. He needed to be prepared for that. But more importantly, he needed to figure out what he truly wanted. He watched Grishna across the fire, seeing the way the flames painted her green skin with golden light, the way her hair fell across her shoulders now that she had let it down for the evening. She was beautiful, strong, kind. Everything he had not known he was looking for. The question was whether she felt the same way, and whether, even if she did, they could build something lasting in a world that would do everything possible to tear them apart. 2 weeks passed with no sign of visitors, and Waylon began to hope the Preston men had decided his friendship with an orc was too strange to be worth their time spreading rumors about. Then, on a particularly cold morning, he woke to the sound of voices outside. He climbed down from the loft quickly, finding Grishna already on her feet, her body tense with alertness. She had clearly heard the voices before he had. Waylon moved to the window and peered out carefully. 5 men on horseback sat in his clearing, all armed. He recognized 2 of them, neighbors from various distances who he had occasionally traded with or encountered at the trading post. The other 3 were strangers, but their bearing suggested authority. Possibly lawmen or representatives from the nearest settlement, which was a 2-day ride south. "You should go to the hunting cabin," Waylon said quietly. "Now I will deal with them." "No," Grishna's voice was firm. "We agreed. Whatever comes, we face together. Grishna, if I run, it confirms every suspicion they have, that I am a threat, that I have something to hide. We face them together, Waylon." She looked at him, her amber eyes steady. "Trust me." He wanted to argue, wanted to force her to safety, but he recognized that same determination in her that he felt when he made his own difficult choices. She would not be swayed. Together, then. They stepped outside into the cold morning air. The 5 men immediately focused on them, and Waylon saw several hands move toward weapons. He kept his own hands visible and empty, standing on his own porch with his head high. "Gentlemen," he called out, "can I help you with something?" The man in the center, a hard-faced individual with gray streaking his beard, urged his horse forward a few steps. "I am Sheriff Thomas Yates from Riverside Settlement. We received reports that you are harboring an orc. I can see those reports were accurate. I am not harboring anyone. Grishna is my guest and has been helping me prepare for winter in exchange for shelter. There is no law against that. There is no specific law, no, Sheriff Yates agreed, but there are concerns. Orcs are known raiders and thieves. Your neighbors worry about their safety. Then my neighbors should meet Grishna before judging her. She is not a raider. She was exiled from her clan for refusing to participate in raids. So she claims. One of the other men, someone Waylon did not recognize, leaned forward in his saddle. Orcs are liars. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows a lot of things that are not true, Waylon replied evenly. I have lived with Grishna for nearly 2 months now. She has been nothing but honest, hardworking, and kind. I trust her completely. Your trust is misplaced. Sheriff Yates sighed, and for a moment he looked almost sympathetic. Son, I understand you may feel grateful to this creature for some reason, but you are putting yourself and others at risk. The best thing for everyone is if the orc leaves, immediately. No. Both Waylon and Grishna spoke at the same time. They glanced at each other, and despite the tension of the situation, Waylon felt a flash of warmth at their unified response. No, the sheriff's expression hardened. I am trying to handle this peacefully, Mr. York. Do not make me do this the hard way. What is the hard way? Waylon asked. Are you threatening violence against someone who has broken no laws? I am saying that if you will not cooperate, I will be forced to take action to protect the community. Grishna stepped forward, drawing all eyes to her. Sheriff Yates, I understand your concerns. Humans have reason to fear orcs, just as orcs have reason to fear humans. There is a long history of violence and pain between our peoples, but I am not that history. I am simply someone trying to survive, trying to find a better way than the violence I was raised with. Pretty words, the sheriff said, but words are cheap. Then judge me by my actions. I have lived here for 2 months without causing harm to anyone. I have worked beside Waylon, helped him prepare for winter, contributed to his household. I saved his life when a bear attacked him. Are those the actions of someone who means harm, or the actions of someone earning trust before stabbing him in the back? But the sheriff's voice was less certain now. If I wanted to harm Waylon, I have had countless opportunities. He sleeps above me every night. I handle knives and axes every day. I know where he keeps his supplies, his money, his weapons. If I meant him harm, why would I wait? The logic of her argument was undeniable. Waylon saw several of the men shifting uncomfortably in their saddles, clearly troubled by the situation. This was not the clear-cut case they had expected. Please, Grishna continued, her voice softer now. I am not asking for acceptance or friendship from your community. I am only asking to be left in peace. I will not go near your settlements. I will not approach your families. I simply want to live quietly here, helping Waylon with his homestead. Is that truly so unreasonable? Sheriff Yates was silent for a long moment, studying both of them. Finally, he spoke. I need some guarantees. You will not leave this property without Waylon accompanying you. You will not approach any other homesteads. And if there are any reports of thefts or violence in this area, you will submit to questioning immediately. Can you agree to those terms? Grishna looked at Waylon, who nodded slightly. I can agree to those terms, she said. And you, Mr. York. You understand that by allowing this orc to remain, you are accepting responsibility for her actions. If she harms anyone or steals anything, you will be held accountable as well. I understand, and I accept that responsibility without hesitation. The sheriff shook his head slowly. You are either the most foolish man I have ever met or the bravest. I have not decided which, but very well. You have your agreement, but hear me clearly, both of you. I will be checking in periodically, and if I hear even a whisper of trouble, I will return with enough men to handle it. Am I understood? Perfectly, Waylon said. The 5 men turned their horses and rode out of the clearing, disappearing back into the forest trail. Waylon and Grishna stood on the porch until the sound of hoofbeats faded entirely. Then Grishna's legs seemed to give out and she sat down heavily on the step. That was terrifying, she said, her voice shaking slightly. I thought they were going to drag me away. Waylon sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. They would have had to go through me first. You would have fought 5 armed men for me, without question. He turned to look at her, and the words he had been holding back for weeks suddenly demanded to be spoken. Grishna, I need to tell you something. I have been trying to find the right moment, but there may not be a right moment, and after today I realize I cannot wait any longer. She met his eyes, her amber gaze searching his face. What is it? I am falling in love with you. Maybe I have already fallen. I do not know exactly when it happened. Just that somewhere between you saving my life and you learning to make terrible jokes about my carpentry skills, you became the most important person in my world. Grishna's eyes widened, her lips parting in surprise. For a terrible moment, Waylon thought he had made a catastrophic mistake, that he had misread everything between them. Then she smiled, soft and wondering and beautiful. I thought it was only me, she whispered. I thought I was foolish for feeling this way, for wanting something that could never be. Why could it never be? Because I am an orc and you are human. Because the world will not accept us. Because even speaking of such feelings is forbidden. I do not care what is forbidden. Waylon reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face gently in his hand. Her skin was warm beneath his palm. I care about what is real and what is true. And this, what I feel for you, is the most real and true thing I have ever experienced. Waylon. His name on her lips was both a prayer and a plea. If we do this, if we allow ourselves to feel this, there will be no going back. We will be bound together in the eyes of anyone who learns of it. You will lose your place in human society forever. I left human society when I came to the frontier. I do not need their approval or their acceptance. I only need you. Grishna's hand came up to cover his, pressing his palm more firmly against her cheek. I love you. Gods help me. I love you so much it terrifies me. The confession hung between them for a heartbeat, and then Waylon leaned in and kissed her. Her lips were soft and warm, and she made a small sound of surprise before kissing him back. It was gentle and sweet, full of all the longing and fear and hope that had been building between them for months. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Grishna rested her forehead against his, her eyes closed. What do we do now? Now we live, we work, we build something together, we figure it out as we go, same as we have been doing. People will find out eventually, about us. About how we feel, probably, and we will deal with that when it happens, together. She laughed, the sound bright despite the tears that had started trailing down her green cheeks. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. The world will try to make it complicated, but at its core, it is the simplest thing imaginable. I love you. You love me. That is all that matters. They sat on the porch for a long time, holding each other as the morning sun climbed higher and the winter cold wrapped around them. Eventually, the practical need for warmth drove them back inside, where they built up the fire and made breakfast together. Something had shifted between them, a barrier finally broken down. They moved around each other with new ease, hands brushing, smiles exchanged, small touches that conveyed affection and belonging. Waylon felt lighter than he had in months, as if admitting his feelings had removed a weight he had not realized he was carrying. The days that followed were some of the happiest of Waylon's life. They continued their work preparing for deep winter, but now there was an undercurrent of joy to everything they did. Grishna sang sometimes while she worked, orc songs in her native language that had haunting melodies. Waylon found himself watching her constantly, struck by how beautiful she was, how strong, how perfectly she fit into his life. They talked late into the night, making plans for the future. Grishna's dream of a place where orcs and humans could live together peacefully became their shared vision. They discussed how it might work, where they might establish such a community, what it would take to make it succeed. It would need to start small, Grishna said one evening, curled against Waylon's side as they sat on the floor before the fire. He had started sleeping on the ground level all the time now, and she had joined him, the two of them sharing the space by the fire rather than separating into loft and floor. Just a few families at first, orcs who want peace, humans who are willing to try. We would need to be far from established settlements, somewhere we could build without interference. The frontier has plenty of unclaimed land. We could scout in spring, find a good location, near water, with fertile soil, defensible but not isolated. We would need others willing to join us. I might be able to reach out to some of the younger orcs in other clans, those who question the old ways like I did. But I do not know how to find humans who would be willing to try. I think you would be surprised. There are people like me, people who came to the frontier because they did not fit into settled society. Some of them might be willing to try something new, especially if they see us as proof it can work. We would need to be so careful. One incident, one act of violence, and everything would fall apart. Then we build slowly and carefully. We prove it can work through our actions, not just our words. Grishna tilted her head up to look at him, her amber eyes reflecting the firelight. You really believe we can do this? I really believe we have to try. What is the alternative? Hide here forever. Pretend the rest of the world does not exist. Neither of us could live that way. No, she agreed softly. We could not. Winter pressed harder as the year turned. Snow piled high against the cabin walls, and the days shortened to brief periods of pale light between long nights. Waylon and Grishna were snowed in for weeks at a time, but neither minded. They had wood for the fire, food in the root cellar, and each other. It was during one of the longest storms that Grishna told Waylon about her mother. They were lying together by the fire, wrapped in blankets, listening to the wind howl outside. She was the fiercest warrior in our clan, Grishna said quietly. My father died when I was young in a raid that went wrong. She raised me alone, trained me to fight from the time I could hold a weapon. She wanted me to be strong, to be someone no one could hurt. But you wanted something different. I wanted to understand why we were fighting, what we were gaining through all the violence and bloodshed. My mother saw those questions as weakness. She said I thought too much, that a warrior acts rather than questions. Thinking is not weakness, it is strength. She did not see it that way. When I refused to participate in the raid, when the chieftain gave me the choice to leave, she stood in front of the entire clan and said she had no daughter, that I was dead to her. Waylon tightened his arms around her, feeling her pain as if it were his own. I am so sorry. The worst part is, I still love her. Despite everything, despite her rejection, I still wish I could make her understand, make her see that there is another way. Maybe someday you will have that chance. If we build what we dream of building, if we create a place where both peoples can live in peace, maybe she will see the value in what you tried to do. Maybe. But Grishna sounded doubtful. Or maybe some people are too set in their ways to change. Either way, I cannot spend my life waiting for her approval. No, you have to live for yourself, make your own choices. I am glad I chose this, chose you. Waylon pressed a kiss to the top of her head. I am glad you chose me too. As winter gradually loosened its grip and the first signs of spring appeared, Waylon began to worry about Grishna leaving. She had said she would stay through the winter, but winter was ending. Would she still want to go? Had their relationship changed her plans? He need not have worried. One morning in early spring, as the snow was melting and the first green shoots were appearing in sheltered areas, Grishna brought up the subject herself. "I am not leaving," she said without preamble as they worked in the barn, mucking out stalls that had accumulated waste over the long winter. "In case you were wondering," relief flooded through Waylon, "I was wondering, actually. You said you would stay through winter. I changed my mind. This is my home now. You are my home." She leaned on her pitchfork, meeting his eyes. "Unless you want me to go. Never. I want you to stay forever. Forever is a long time. Not long enough." He set down his own tool and crossed to her, pulling her into his arms despite the dirt and smell surrounding them. "I want to build a life with you, Grishna. I want to make our dream of a peaceful community real. I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I want all of it, everything we can have together." She kissed him, deep and sweet, and when she pulled back she was smiling. "Then that is what we will do." They spent the early spring preparing, not just for the coming growing season, but for their larger plan. Waylon began carefully sounding out other frontier homesteaders during his trips to the trading post, feeling out who might be sympathetic to the idea of peaceful coexistence with orcs. He was subtle, never directly mentioning Grishna or his own situation, just floating ideas and gauging reactions. The responses were mixed. Most people were outright hostile to the idea, seeing orcs as irredeemable monsters. But a few, a small but significant few, were willing to at least consider the possibility. They were people like Waylon himself, misfits and outcasts who had come to the frontier because they did not fit into mainstream human society. Meanwhile, Grishna began making cautious contact with orcs from other clans. It was dangerous work, requiring her to travel into orcish territories where she might be recognized as an exile. But she was careful, approached only orcs she had known before, younger orcs who might be sympathetic. She came back from these trips exhausted and often discouraged, but also with a few tentative promises. There were orcs who shared her vision, who wanted something better than endless raiding and conflict. They were afraid, but they were interested. Summer came, warm and golden. Waylon's fields produced well, and he and Grishna worked side by side to harvest and preserve food. They had visitors occasionally, including one more visit from Sheriff Yates, who seemed surprised to find everything peaceful and orderly. "I admit, I thought this would have ended in disaster by now," the sheriff said as he accepted a cup of water and sat on Waylon's porch. "But you seem to be managing." "More than managing," Waylon replied. "Thriving." The sheriff looked at Grishna, who was working in the garden, then back at Waylon. "There are rumors about you too, about the nature of your relationship." Waylon met his eyes steadily. "People will always talk. So the rumors are true." "I am not sure what the rumors say, so I cannot confirm or deny them. But I will say this. Grishna is the most honorable, kind, and capable person I have ever known. I am grateful every day that she came into my life." Sheriff Yates was quiet for a long moment. "You know this cannot end well. Even if the orc herself means no harm, other humans will not accept it. Eventually something will happen, maybe, or maybe we will prove that there is another way. I hope you are right, for your sake." The sheriff stood, preparing to leave. "Just be careful, son. The frontier is dangerous enough without making enemies of your own kind." After he left, Grishna came to sit beside Waylon on the porch. "He is not entirely wrong, you know. We are walking a dangerous path. I know. But it is the path we chose, together. By late summer, they had made enough progress on their larger plan to take the next step. They had identified a location about 30 miles north, near a river with good access to water and fertile land. It was far enough from established human settlements to avoid immediate conflict, but not so isolated that they would be completely cut off. They began making trips to the site, clearing land, marking out where buildings would go. It was exhausting work, but it felt purposeful in a way that simply maintaining Waylon's homestead never had. They were building something new, something important. In the fall, their first potential settlers arrived. Two young orcs, brother and sister, who had heard about Grishna's vision from someone she had spoken to. They were nervous, clearly expecting hostility from Waylon, but he welcomed them warmly. They camped near the new settlement site, and over several days, Waylon and Grishna explained the plan in detail. "This will not be an orc settlement or a human settlement," Grishna told them. "It will be something new, a place where both peoples live and work together as equals. There will be rules, agreed upon by everyone, that apply to all. No raiding, no stealing. Disputes resolved through talking, not violence. Everyone contributes, everyone benefits. And if humans attack us," the brother, whose name was Durgash, asked, "we defend ourselves, but proportionally. We do not seek revenge or escalate conflicts. We respond with exactly enough force to protect ourselves and no more." "That is a hard way to live," the sister Mala said. "Orcs believe in answering violence with greater violence. And where has that gotten us?" Grishna challenged. "We are scattered in small clans, constantly raiding just to survive, feared and hated by humans. Is that really the life you want?" The siblings exchanged glances. "No," Durgash finally said. "No, it is not. We will join you." 1 week later, a human couple arrived. They were older, probably in their 50s, and they had a quiet dignity about them. The man introduced himself as Garrett Yates and his wife as Ellen. Waylon blinked in surprise at the last name. "Any relation to Sheriff Thomas Yates?" Garrett smiled wryly. "My younger brother." "We have not spoken in years, but when he mentioned a fool homesteader trying to build peace with orcs, I got curious. Thomas thinks you are crazy, but I think you might be onto something." Over the next few weeks, their small group grew, not rapidly but steadily. A young human man named Winston Yancey, who had lost his family to a disease and was looking for a new purpose. An elderly orc woman named Ragha, who had been a healer in her clan and was tired of tending wounds from meaningless battles. A human family with 3 children who were fleeing debt in the settled territories and willing to try anything for a fresh start. By the time winter threatened again, they had 11 people committed to the new settlement, which they had named Greenvale. It was a mix of orcs and humans, and while there were tensions and misunderstandings, everyone was genuinely trying to make it work. Waylon and Grishna split their time between Waylon's original homestead and Greenvale, making sure both places were maintained. It was exhausting, but Waylon had never felt more fulfilled. He was watching his and Grishna's dream become reality, brick by brick, log by log. But of course, not everyone was happy about it. The trouble came in the form of Hank Preston and a group of about 15 men from various homesteads. They arrived at Greenvale on a cold morning in late fall, all armed, all angry. Waylon saw them coming and immediately called for everyone to gather in the main clearing they had established. "Stay calm," he told the assembled settlers, both orc and human. "No one draw weapons unless I give the word." Hank rode at the head of the group, his face twisted with anger. "We heard about what you are doing here, York, building some kind of orc settlement. We cannot allow it." "This is not an orc settlement," Waylon replied calmly. "It is a mixed settlement of humans and orcs living together peacefully. We are not bothering anyone, not raiding, not causing trouble. We are simply trying to build lives. You are inviting savages to live among us. You are putting every human in this territory at risk. The only ones creating risk are those who come looking for violence. Waylon kept his voice level. We have been here for months now with no incidents. If you have specific complaints, I am happy to address them, but we are not leaving. We are not giving you a choice. Hank's hand moved to his weapon. Then Grishna stepped forward, and with her came Durgash and Ragha and the other orcs. They did not draw weapons, but they made an impressive sight, strong and determined. At the same time, the human settlers moved to stand with them. Garrett, Yates, Winston, the family with children, all of them forming a united line. You will have to go through all of us, Grishna said clearly. Human and orc alike, we stand together. Hank looked at the united front before him, and Waylon saw doubt creep into his expression. This was not what he had expected. He had thought the humans would welcome rescue from the orcs, that there would be a clear division. Instead, he found a community standing as one. You are making a mistake, Hank finally said, but the certainty had gone from his voice. Maybe, Waylon agreed. But it is our mistake to make. We are not hurting anyone. We are just trying to live differently. Is that really so threatening? It is unnatural. So is living in houses instead of caves. So is farming instead of hunting. So is everything humans have ever built. We are trying to build something new here, Hank. Something better. You can either leave us in peace or become the very violence you claim to be protecting people from. The standoff lasted for what felt like hours but was probably only a few minutes. Finally, one of the men with Hank spoke up. He has a point, Hank. They are not hurting anyone. They are orcs. Some of them are human, and they are all just trying to live, same as us. Slowly, a few of the men began turning their horses, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of attacking a mixed group of settlers who had done nothing wrong. Hank tried to rally them, but the moment had passed. Eventually, red-faced and furious, he turned his own horse. "This is not over," he snarled. "You will regret this, all of you." But he rode away, taking his increasingly reluctant followers with him. The settlers remained standing together until the sound of hoofbeats faded completely. Then someone started cheering, and soon the entire group was celebrating, orcs and humans embracing, voices raised in triumph. Waylon found Grishna in the crowd and pulled her close. "We did it. We survived. That is not the same as winning. It is a start." They saw us standing together, saw that we are not enemies but neighbors. That matters. She smiled, and there was hope in her eyes. Yes, it matters. That winter was hard, testing the new community in ways that conflict never could. Resources were stretched thin. Personalities clashed. There were misunderstandings about customs and traditions. But they worked through each challenge together, establishing systems for sharing food, resolving disputes, maintaining order. Waylon and Grishna became the de facto leaders, though neither wanted the title. People simply looked to them for guidance, for mediation when conflicts arose. They held community meetings where everyone, orc and human alike, had a voice in decisions. It was exhausting and messy and far from perfect, but it worked. As spring approached, bringing with it the promise of renewal, Waylon realized they needed to formalize their relationship. In human society, that meant marriage. In orc culture, it meant something called a bonding ceremony. He asked Grishna to teach him about the orcish tradition, and together they worked out a ceremony that honored both their backgrounds. On the first warm day of spring, with the entire community gathered as witnesses, Waylon and Grishna stood before each other in the center of Greenvale. Garrett Yates, the closest thing they had to an officiant, spoke first. "We gather here to witness something unprecedented. The bonding and marriage of a human man and an orc woman." This union represents everything we are trying to build here. The belief that differences can be bridged, that understanding can triumph over hatred, that love can flourish even in the most unlikely circumstances. Then Grishna spoke, her voice strong and clear. In Orcish tradition, bonding requires the declaration of 3 truths before witnesses. These truths bind the speakers to their word and to each other. She turned to face Waylon fully, taking his hands in hers. Waylon York, my first truth, I love you with everything I am. You saw me not as a monster or a curiosity, but as a person. You defended me when others would have cast me out. You believed in me when I struggled to believe in myself. Waylon felt his throat tighten with emotion. Grishna, my first truth, you saved my life, and in doing so, you gave me a reason to live it fully. Before you, I was existing, not living. You showed me what it means to be truly brave, to stand for what is right even when it costs everything. My second truth, Grishna continued. I pledge to stand beside you through whatever comes. In times of joy and times of sorrow, in peace and in conflict, your battles are my battles. Your dreams are my dreams. We face the world together. My second truth, I will honor you always, not just in word but in deed. I will build the world we dream of, where people like us can live freely. I will never let fear or prejudice make me doubt what we have, what we are. My third truth, Grishna said, and tears now flowed freely down her green cheeks. With you, I am home. After a lifetime of feeling like I did not belong anywhere with anyone, I finally know where I am meant to be. Beside you, building something beautiful and new and terrifying and wonderful. Waylon's own eyes were wet now, and his voice shook as he spoke his final truth. My third truth, I choose you today and every day. No matter what comes, no matter how hard it gets, no matter who stands against us. I choose you, and I will keep choosing you until my last breath. Garrett cleared his throat, clearly moved. By the power vested in me by this community and by basic human decency, I declare you bonded and married. May your union be a light to guide us all. They kissed then, to the cheers and applause of their gathered friends and neighbors, both orc and human. It was a moment of pure joy, of hope realized, of barriers shattered. The celebration that followed lasted well into the night. There was food and music, with orc drums and human fiddles creating strange but beautiful harmonies. Children, both species, played together without the fear and suspicion their parents had known. It felt, for one perfect evening, like the dream had become reality. But Waylon knew this was just the beginning. They had created something fragile and beautiful, but it would take constant work to maintain, to protect, to help it grow. There would be more Hank Prestons, more people who could not accept what they were building. There would be challenges from both human and orc societies. None of that mattered in that moment, though. In that moment, as he danced with his wife under the stars, surrounded by a community that represented everything they believed in, Waylon was simply happy. Over the following year, Greenvale grew. Word spread, slowly but surely, of the settlement where humans and orcs lived together in peace. More settlers arrived, drawn by the promise of a place where they could be accepted. Each new arrival brought challenges and opportunities, expanding their community and testing their principles. They established trade with a few nearby homesteads, proving that they could be valuable neighbors rather than threats. They developed systems for education, teaching both orc and human children together. They created a council with equal representation from both species to make decisions affecting the whole community. It was not perfect. There were fights, misunderstandings, setbacks. An orc teenager got into a brawl with a human boy over a perceived insult. A human family tried to claim more than their fair share of communal resources. An elderly orc woman refused to accept healing from a human doctor, but they worked through each problem together. And slowly, gradually, the community matured from a hopeful experiment into a stable settlement. Waylon and Grishna's relationship deepened as well. They had moved permanently to Greenvale, building a larger home to serve as both their residence and a community gathering place. They learned each other's rhythms and habits, fought and made up, supported each other through stresses, and celebrated each other's triumphs. In the second year of their marriage, Grishna discovered she was pregnant. The news sent shockwaves through the community. A human orc child, the first of its kind that anyone knew of. There were no references to consult, no way to know what complications might arise. The pregnancy was difficult. Grishna struggled with illness and exhaustion, and there were several scares where they feared losing the baby. But she was strong, and Ragha, the orc healer, worked tirelessly to support her. Waylon barely left her side, holding her hand through the worst of it, whispering encouragement and love. When their daughter was born on a crisp autumn morning, the entire community held its breath. She was small but healthy, with skin a lighter shade of green than her mother's and small, barely visible tusks. Her eyes, when they opened, were a striking mix of Waylon's gray and Grishna's amber. They named her Kira, which meant hope in the orcish tongue. Holding his daughter for the first time, Waylon felt a surge of emotion so powerful it nearly brought him to his knees. This tiny being, this perfect blend of two worlds, represented everything they had fought for. She was living proof that orcs and humans were not so different that love could bridge any divide. "She is beautiful," Grishna whispered, exhausted but radiant as she gazed at their daughter. "She is perfect," Waylon agreed, "just like her mother." Kira became the darling of Greenvale, doted on by orcs and humans alike. Everyone took pride in her, seeing in her the promise of what their community could become. As she grew, thriving in the loving environment, she became a symbol of hope not just for Greenvale but for the wider world. News of the half-orc child spread, and with it came renewed interest in what they were building. Some of that interest was hostile, but much of it was curious. More settlers arrived, more families willing to try something new. The settlement expanded, requiring new buildings, new fields, new infrastructure. By the time Kira was 3 years old, Greenvale had nearly 100 residents and was thriving. They had established formal trade routes with human settlements, exporting crafted goods and produce. They had developed a reputation for fairness and quality, making them valuable trading partners, despite the prejudices some still held. Waylon watched his daughter play in the community square one warm summer afternoon, chasing after a ball with a mixed group of orc and human children, and felt a deep sense of contentment. They had done it. They had taken an impossible dream and made it real. Grishna came to stand beside him, slipping her hand into his. "What are you thinking?" "That I am grateful. For the bear that charged me that day in the forest, for you stepping between us without hesitation, for every choice that led us here." She laughed softly. "You are grateful for nearly being killed. I am grateful for what came after. For you, for this," he gestured to the thriving settlement around them, "for our daughter, for the life we built together. It has not been easy. No, but it has been worth it. Every difficult moment, every challenge, every sacrifice, all worth it." They stood in comfortable silence, watching their daughter play, watching their community thrive. In the distance, smoke rose from chimneys of homes where orc and human families lived side by side. In the fields, mixed work crews brought in the harvest. In the school building, children of both species learned together. It was not perfect. There were still problems to solve, prejudices to overcome, bridges to build, but they had proven it was possible. They had shown that a different future could exist, one built on understanding rather than fear, cooperation rather than conflict. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Kira ran over to them, her face flushed with excitement. "Papa! Mama! Come play with us." Waylon swept her up into his arms, making her giggle. "What are we playing? We are building a new house. But we need more people to help." "A new house, him? That sounds like very important work." He glanced at Grishna, who smiled and nodded. Together, they walked into the square to join the children in their game. As they played, building imaginary houses for an imaginary settlement, Waylon reflected on how far they had come. From that moment in the forest, when a terrified human man faced a charging bear and an orc woman stepped between them without hesitation, to this. A family, a community, a future. The beast had charged straight at him, and Grishna had stepped between them without hesitation. In doing so, she had saved more than his life. She had saved his soul, shown him a better way, given him a purpose worth fighting for. And together, they had changed the world. Not the whole world, not yet. But their corner of it, their small settlement on the frontier, was proof that change was possible. That old hatreds could be overcome. That people who were supposed to be enemies could become friends, neighbors, family. As darkness fell and the families of Greenvale gathered for their evening meal, orcs and humans sitting together, sharing food and stories and laughter, Waylon looked at his wife and saw his entire world. She met his gaze and smiled, a smile full of love and contentment and quiet triumph. They had done it. Against all odds, despite every obstacle, they had built something beautiful and lasting. They had created a place where their daughter could grow up safe and loved, where future generations could live without the fear and hatred that had defined the past. The future was uncertain, as all futures are. There would be more challenges ahead, more obstacles to overcome. But Waylon faced that uncertain future with confidence because he knew he would not face it alone. He had Grishna beside him, his partner in all things. He had their daughter, their community, their shared dream made real. And he had the knowledge that sometimes when a beast charges straight at you, the answer is not to run or fight alone. Sometimes, the answer is to accept the help offered, to stand together, to build bridges instead of walls. That moment in the forest had changed everything. It had brought two people together who were never supposed to meet, let alone love each other. It had sparked a movement that was slowly spreading across the frontier, proving that peace was possible, that understanding could triumph over hatred. As Waylon tucked Kira into bed that night, listening to her sleepy chatter about her day, he thought about all the children growing up in Greenvale, both orc and human. They would grow up knowing a different world than their parents had known. They would see each other not as enemies but as friends, neighbors, fellow community members. That was the true victory. Not just that he and Grishna had found love, though that was precious and important. Not just that they had built a successful settlement, though that mattered too. The true victory was in the next generation, in children like Kira who would never know the prejudices and fears that had divided their parents' peoples. "Tell me the story again," Kira requested as he pulled her blanket up. "About how you and Mama met." Waylon smiled. He had told this story hundreds of times and it never got old. "Well, there was a bear." "A big bear," Kira interjected, "the biggest bear, and it charged straight at me, ready to attack. I thought I was done for. But then your mama, the bravest, strongest person I have ever known, stepped between us without hesitation." As he told the story, Grishna appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame and listening with a soft smile. When he finished and Kira's eyes had finally closed in sleep, they walked together to their own room, hands linked. "You ever regret it?" Waylon asked quietly as they settled into bed. "Leaving your clan, giving up the life you knew, taking the chance on all of this?" Grishna turned to face him, her amber eyes catching the moonlight filtering through the window. "Not for a single moment. You and Kira and this community we built, you are my life now. My real life, the one I was always meant to have. I love you. I love you too." They lay together in the darkness, listening to the peaceful sounds of their settlement sleeping around them. Somewhere in the distance, an orc was singing a lullaby to their child. From another direction came the sound of human laughter, friends sharing stories after a long day's work. It all blended together into a symphony of life, of community, of hope realized. The beast had charged straight at him. The orc woman had stepped between them without hesitation. And in that moment, both of their lives had changed forever, setting in motion events that would reshape their world. It was the beginning of a love story, yes, but it was also the beginning of something larger, a movement, a revolution. A better future built one relationship, one friendship, one shared meal at a time. And as Waylon drifted off to sleep with his wife in his arms and his daughter safe in the next room, he knew with absolute certainty that they had succeeded in the task they had set for themselves. They had proven that another way was possible. They had built something that would outlast them, something that would continue to grow and spread long after they were gone. They had created a legacy not of war and hatred, but of peace and understanding. The beast had charged and everything had changed. For the better. Forever.